We're live.
We live? Are we on? Are we
We're
recording?
live and we are being recorded.
Hello,
Everything we
everybody.
say is being broadcast on the podcast.
Oh, goodness.
I'm suddenly nervous. I'm not quite sure what to say.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
This is
Gail Wolf, and this is my friend Dr. Jay Eaker,
Hey guys.
and this is New Consciousness Now.
New consciousness now.
New Consciousness Now. It's not New Consciousness later or yesterday. It's right now.
Exactly.
It's right now.
Exactly.
It's happening.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Boy, I've been working my butt off lately, to be honest with you. Yeah, just you ever get in those flows where there's just seems like there's one thing after another, and you're kind of like, oh, I can do it. I can take it
Mm.
on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're all gung ho and gusto about the moment and getting things
Right?
done, and kind of in that flow, and then it seems like all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're just not in that flow anymore, and you're like, man, why
Mm.
did I take all this stuff on? So
Yeah.
I'm in one of those gusto gung ho flow
Mm.
moments right now.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
uh,
What are
yeah.
your, I don't know, can you say what your different projects are, or is that classified?
Oh no, it's I've got no. This isn't Area 51 or anything. I almost called it Club 54, but that's something entirely different. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, very very different. No, this what am I working on? Well, I had 3 sessions over the last 2 days, and so
Mm-hmm.
sending out those recordings and then
Mm.
doing my monthly emailing, which
Mm.
I keep thinking that's going to be easier, and I just keep adding more stuff to it.
Mm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
every month, I add a little something more. In fact, just before we jumped on here to record this, I was including in my monthly emailing the link to this YouTube channel and this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was integrating that into the my emailing.
Right.
And it's like this thing just kind of keeps growing and growing and growing and growing.
Right.
It's
Right.
like, holy cow. And the other thing, every month I put a new healer on there too, or a
Mm.
person. In fact, you were my person of the month a couple of months ago.
Oh, right. Right.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
kind of
I had like a while ago, like I found similar, like I had this, newsletter or whatever. And yeah, I was kind of making it really elaborate and same kind of like kept adding, trying to add stuff to it, add value. I thought was doing the same thing, kind of like trying to add, you know, different practitioners or whatever. And yeah,
yeah.
eventually I sort of dropped it.
Well,
Let her
I
drop
found
it.
myself losing a little bit of steam here also because quite honestly, I don't how you can look on those emailings, you can look at your click rate, see how
Mm-hmm.
many people are actually
Right.
clicking on the stuff that you've got in there.
Right.
And I think my emailing goes out to 200 and am I in the 40, whatever, 250 some people, I'll just say
Right.
that. And I think 50 some percent, 40 to 50% on the average will open it.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
then
good. That's really good.
is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay. I was kind of like, who are the slackers out there?
No,
Not that I
that's
ever
really
really looked
good.
into it, but
Yeah.
but but then um but then I was noticing that of that 40 to 50%, that probably only 10% were clicking on
Mm-hmm.
anything at
Mm-hmm.
all.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, wow, I'm putting all this content in
Right.
there and
No one's paying
nobody's
attention to it.
looking at any of it.
Yeah,
So
that's
what am
another
I doing?
reason why exactly the same thing happened to me. Like I was doing that stuff for a long time, and it's like, wow, no one's really, not many people are paying attention to it.
Yeah.
I just shifted gears a little bit to like just a simpler. I've been making videos and then just like write a quick thing. Just watching what other like online marketers do and just write a quick thing and with a link to the video and send it out. Um, but
Yeah. Well, I'm figuring out also. what I've noticed is I am I'm up in my game every single time I send one of these things out because uh like I'm curious, like, okay, I haven't updated this one link in probably 5 or 6 months. I'm
Mhm.
like, gosh, what does this even go to? I mean,
Right.
I know that it goes to advertise the one group I've created called the
Mhm.
channel, right? Which is a group for
Mhm.
intuitions. But I'm like, well, what's on that page? I don't even remember what's on that page. I created it so long ago.
Right.
So I went on to it today and I'm like, wow, I need to update this a little bit. So I went through and I like tweaked a whole bunch of stuff on that. And it's like I improved that
Mhm.
page, which I know people have used because I've got a landing page I use through Constant Contacts, and um, so like I am constantly using this monthly emailing to kind of tweak and upgrade my systems
Mhm.
and think through my click funnels. Well, if a
Mhm.
person clicks here, then they go here,
Mhm.
then
Mhm.
they end up here. And what's this page look like? What's that look like? Is
Mhm.
that the most
Mhm.
efficient way to do it, or is it
Right.
better to take them directly to PayPal or something like that?
Right.
So
Yep. Good. Yep.
it's just all an edge, all an
Right.
edge.
Right. Yeah. Um yep. Similar experience.
Yeah, yeah. It's just all that I don't know, redoing things,
Mhm.
constantly learning. So that's how
And
I'm doing. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back in my office working on people. That's interesting. Like I was saying, I got wearing gloves, and
Ooh.
that's a glove.
Ooh. Thank you. Good. I'm glad that
Right.
there's 5 fingers and not just one.
Exactly. Wanted to make that clear.
Yeah,
That's a
that's the
glove.
glove.
And wearing a mask. Got my mask.
Oh, I thought those were panties for a second. I'm
It
glad
does.
that
It looks like it is kind of like putting a
you
bra
picked
on
that
your
up. I'm like,
face.
was he putting a thong on his face or what is
Totally.
that? Okay,
It is like wearing a bra on your face. That's what
that's
I,
right. I was like, does your wife know you're
not
going
that
through
I
her,
have,
her
not that
drawers?
I, yes. Not that I have any other, I didn't have any reference for what a bra feels like when you put it on your face. But I imagine that's what it
Sure,
feels like.
sure. It's good to imagine. We're gonna go to the land of make believe, where Jay's gonna put a bra on his face.
That's right. And so yeah, and yeah, it's just weird. It's a little weird. I hope someday we don't have to do that.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Yeah, I think it'd be good to go outside and not have to have anything on your face. Go into
Right?
the store without having anything on your face.
Mm-hmm.
Look at your neighbor and wonder if they're silently killing you with their breath.
Right. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. When I see people at the store or whatever, it's like unless you get smile really big and so that people can see you're smiling with your eyes, I think they don't know.
No.
They don't know what you're doing behind there.
No.
I might be sticking my tongue out at them, or
Oh, that might be kind of fun, actually. No, there's a certain level of I don't know. I'm a people watcher.
mm-hmm.
I like checking people out,
Mm-hmm.
and
I'm
I
with
walk
you.
around and I go down the aisle with someone. I notice I look extra hard at them. Like, do I
Mm-hmm.
know you?
Yeah.
Do I know those
Right.
eyes? Do I know that body type? I'm not
Right.
quite sure. And so
Right.
I look a little harder, and I don't know if I creep people out sometimes or not. But I figure, well, I'll just at least give them a head nod and let them know that I'm not
Right.
stalking them.
Right. I mean, I'm married, so I don't have to worry about it. But happily married, very happily married, I don't have to worry about it. But I was thinking, like, what would, in the world of what would the world of dating be like these days? If you're like, hey,
That's, that is interesting, right?
she's got a cute mask.
Yeah, boy, the way that pink it just brings out her hair. Oh my gosh, I really wonder what her lips look like under that mask. What's like,
Yeah.
what kind of nose does she have? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Boy, the mystique. it's just the added mystique,
Mm. It's like
Mm.
Middle East or whatever with
Yeah, the burqas.
the burqas
They
or
walk around with the
whatever.
burqa.
Yeah.
You just see the eyes. That's all you
Right.
get. You just
Right.
see the eyes.
Right.
And some of them, they even have those covered over, where it's like you just like they're looking
Oh, right.
through a dark veil.
A
Like
mesh
you have,
thing.
it's like
Yeah.
Cousin It. You have no idea what's beneath everything.
Yeah. I
But I
guess
do
just
wonder. I mean, what's this doing for things like Tinder and eharmony.com and
right.
you know, oh God, there's this one called oh God, Fresh Off the Farm or Farmer,
Fresh off the farm.
something like that. I don't remember what it's called. It's the
Uh-huh.
dating website for farmers. I kid
Uh-huh.
you not, man. This is
Right.
totally legit. I had a girlfriend in Oakland for a while, and she logged on there and made a whole whole profile with
Mm-hmm.
herself. So then we would log on it at night and laugh about, this is some of the stuff that was on there because it was hilarious. My
Fresh
little
off the farm. That's
something
good.
like that, or
Right.
myfarmerdate.com or
Right.
farmer love or
Right.
rollinthehay.com. I don't remember what it was called.
Right.
So that was
Yeah.
entertaining.
Well, fortunately, like I said, I'm married, and otherwise, I'd probably be on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm, I actually, it's interesting. I have I actually do have a Tinder account, but I don't use it. In fact, I noticed that I log on there and I look at it like once, uh, I don't know, probably once every 2 weeks or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll look on it just for entertainment, and I'm like, I'm just not interested in that.
Hmm.
I realize I'm just not interested in it. I'm
Right.
like, I don't. There's a part of me that knows that like that's probably not where I'm going to meet somebody I would be interested in, because
Right.
I realize that God, probably been, I bet it's been 10 years or so since I've had a one night stand. It's just like, it's just not my flow. I just
Huh.
don't do that anymore.
Right. Right.
So I kind of ask myself the questions like, why do I even have this? I'm like, well,
Uh-huh.
it's entertaining, I suppose.
Right.
uh,
Huh.
oh
Well, good work.
well, I don't know, it's
10
something.
years, that's good work. I mean, it's not like it's probably not healthy to be hooking up these days if this or it's probably, it's not
Yeah, right.
this isn't conducive to
No,
hooking up,
no,
I wouldn't think.
no, it's the COVID kiss.
Yeah. Making out mass anyway.
Yeah, yeah, right, it could be. That would be interesting.
Anyway.
Well, like eye gazing. It probably just
Right,
just
that's
do some,
true. That's
just
true.
we'll do a date and we'll eye gaze.
Gazing into each
Maybe
other's
this is
souls.
the next level.
Maybe it is. It's yeah, pushing us
Yeah,
uh, towards gazing into each other's souls,
yeah,
connecting on a soul level more.
yeah.
Maybe.
Speaking of that,
Well, speaking of that,
speaking of that, speaking of that soul gazing.
right. So we thought maybe we'd talk about our sort of awakening experiences
Yeah,
or an awakening experience.
awakening experiences.
Because certainly awakening sort of experiences have been, I don't know, definitely there's been a few of them, but for me, but a few, but one or two that's like really important and I can see sort of really change things or set me on a path. And anyway, I thought those would be interesting. Might spark off some interesting conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a great topic. I think it's a great topic
Well,
because they're not easy.
yeah, that's your experience. Say more.
Has been. Well, I don't know. I didn't, well, okay, I'll just dive in. Like, so I had my main moment with God, if you will, was like when I was 30 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
you know,
And how old are you now?
I'm 45.
So this was some
45.
15 years ago.
15 years ago.
Okay.
And I was like, I had no interest in any of this stuff. Zero.
Really?
Absolutely
None.
zero. I mean,
Hmm.
I grew up, the only inclining I had, I was curious, maybe a little fascinated by UFOs,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of the mystique of it all. But
Right.
I didn't research it. I didn't look into it. I wasn't at all trying to find them. I would see a blinking light in the sky and go, "Gosh, that's kind of weird. Is that a UFO?" And I would kind of get the heebie-jeebies,
Right.
And but it didn't really go any further than that. But then, I noticed that I was drawn to like this witch, a book on witches, in
Mm-hmm.
our high school library, and I would look at that
Mm-hmm.
every once in a while, and I would just kind of be like, "Well, this is interesting. It's different. It's out of the norm, but
Mm-hmm.
it really didn't go much beyond that, to be honest with you. But but when I was 30, though,
Mm-hmm.
things got really, really real quick.
So where were you? You were living where? In
Uh,
Illinois?
yeah, it's back when my sister Tanya and I had
Uh-huh.
that duplex in Hastings,
Uh-huh.
which is in actually Minnesota,
Huh.
just
Okay.
south of the Twin Cities, Minnesota, by about 30 miles. And it was wild because I had a girlfriend at the time that I was living with.
Mm-hmm.
Relatively happy, things were good. I had a great paying job. I was working as a pipe fitter, blah blah blah, and she did this trip down to Peru. She saw a shaman.
Was she into such things, apparently?
Well, I guess so. Yes and no. I mean, she was just mostly just taking this trip to Peru,
Hmm.
and um, they met this shaman or whatever, and she bought some necklace for me, a mandala, had
Mm-hmm.
it blessed by the shaman, and she brought it home to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she handed it to me, and she goes, "Here, this was blessed by a shaman." And as soon as she said that word and set that thing in my hand, it
Hmm.
was like there's like a little switch went off inside of me. It was
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, "Ooh, what's this? What's shaman?" I was really
Mm-hmm.
curious about what
Hmm.
this shaman word is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and I bought like two books, got a little bit curious about it, started researching a little bit, and then I started hearing this voice, and it was telling me that I should split up with her and that I should quit my job and do all these things. And I was like, well, that's pretty weird, And I thought, no way. But it's like it kept going. It was really persistent and felt really true and really right. And I'm like,
Huh.
well, all right. So I did. I did. I broke up with her. She moved out. I quit my job. I was at home. And
Wait a minute. This is some voice. Like you. This is
yeah, it was
not
a voice.
you. You did you feel like it was your voice or just a knowing, or was it like a voice?
It was a voice along with a knowing.
Uh-huh.
And it was almost like, when you hear truth that you can't argue with and your whole
Mm-hmm.
body just aligns with
Mm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
even though maybe even you don't want to hear it,
Mm-hmm.
you're like,
Right.
damn, I just know that that's true. I wish it
Right.
wasn't, but I know that it is.
Right.
It's like that voice was saying those things and I knew it was
Hmm.
true. Like I
Hmm.
knew it would be best to split up. I knew it would be best to quit the job, even though it made no logical sense at all
Huh.
whatsoever. But I did it. And
That's pretty
it was,
cool of you to trust that.
well, I guess so. I don't know. I don't know. I actually don't know what I was thinking at the time. but but then one night I woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't move my body at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was pinned to the bed and it
Mm.
was as if I was nailed to the cross.
Whoa.
My legs were pressed together like this.
Right.
My arms were splayed out to the side like this, wide
Whoa.
open,
Mm-hmm.
and I could not move my body. I'm like, I literally was going to try to get out of bed because I was scared, but I couldn't move. It was like
Wow.
something was holding me down.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing I could move was my head. That was it. And I freak out. I'm like, that what the heck is going on here? And I look to my left and I had blue light coming out of my left hand. Well, this can't be real. This is obviously a dream. I mean, this doesn't happen.
Are you like awake, eyes open that you see
Awake
this, or is
eye.
this like an are you like seeing your astral body or something?
Well, my eyes are open. I
Okay.
opened my eyes and looked. In
Uh-huh.
fact, I'm like, okay, this is a dream. So I closed my eyes
Mm-hmm.
and I checked in. And I'm like, wait a minute. I was lucid enough to know, okay, the way I'm thinking right now is not the way I think during a dream. And I
Mm.
felt my body for a second.
Hmm.
Like, okay, the presence I have in my body is the same as when I'm awake.
Hmm.
I'm awake. And so I
Mm-hmm.
open my eyes back up and I'm like, there's no way that that blue light is still there. I looked again and it was still there.
Hmm.
And the thing was, it was the most beautiful blue light I'd ever seen.
Hmm.
It was mesmerizing. It was so beautiful. I couldn't believe it. Well, I'll be honest, I don't really remember what happened after that. I'm not quite sure. Um, but what I do know is I woke up the next day and dude, I could remember past lives they'd happened yesterday.
Hmm.
It was the most horrendous experience of my life. I
Hmm.
remembered I remember being a heretic in France
Mm-hmm.
and getting arrested for it and thrown in a dungeon. And
Mm-hmm.
I got left to rot down there.
Mm.
Um, I remember being actually the first memory I had, the very first thing that I had was I remembered Jesus.
Hmm.
And I remember being strapped to a rock with leather straps, and it was like not just a rock; it was like a big boulder, and then some dude just whipping my back,
Mm.
whipping me,
Mm-hmm.
and I could. It's like I could. It's almost like I could feel it in my back.
Mm.
It was horrible.
Hmm.
Um, and then there was I don't know. There was just a handful of things that I could remember. I remember getting burned at a cross one time.
Wow.
Um, just lots of crazy stuff I remembered, and that I spent the next 6 months as a total shut in. Like that opened me up in such a way. Like I would go into public and I would see colors around people. I could hear their thoughts. I could hear
Uh-huh.
voices in my head constantly. I couldn't sleep. I was constantly sad. I got deeply depressed.
I was gonna say, it sounds like that would be pretty emotional.
It was rotten. It was not good. But what was good was I didn't have to work. Um, that part was cool, but I was drawing unemployment at the time, you know.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was crazy. I mean, like I couldn't even go to the store. I remember going into a grocery store. I get in my cart, and I'm like, I just want to get in. I just want to get out. Get in, get out. I go
Uh-huh.
into the cereal aisle, and some lady is like Kicks or Cocoa Puffs or something like that. I literally heard that thought, and I'm like, what the? Who's thinking about Kicks or? And there's some lady standing there looking at the cereal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm out of here, man. I'm out of here. I just left the store. I couldn't deal. Couldn't deal. Went back to my car and started crying again. I cried about every day, like just
Mm-hmm.
almost nonstop. It was terrible.
Was it like, did you feel like your heart had sort of been opened, or was it just like crying, like, just feeling despair, or feeling like, what the F is
Well,
going on?
I remembered well, every morning I woke up and I was disappointed that I was still alive. Like I really wanted to die. I
Whoa.
honest to God, I wanted to be dead. I really
Whoa.
wanted to be dead. Um, and it was like 2 days after that had happened. I was sitting by my bed and I was just crying and crying and crying. I didn't really know why. I just felt horrible inside. That's all I knew. And I remember I had this extremely lucid moment sitting there, and it was like it was like this knowing I had in my body and my bones, like, and it was almost like it was saying to me like, you have this opportunity in this life to do something extraordinary.
Hmm.
If you lean into this and say yes, it will change your life, but you do have the option to say no if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt into that for a second and my whole body just lined up. It was like, well,
Hmm.
of course I'm going to say yes. Like I almost couldn't say no kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It just felt so right to
Mm.
say yes that
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so it all continued um, for
Did you, I
6 months.
mean, you say you didn't have like any prior experience with this. I mean, like, did you think that you were, losing your mind, or did you think that
Oh
did
yeah.
you like look into it? Like, what, I don't know. Did you go see a doctor? Did you research what the heck was going on to you, or? What?
Well, I didn't know what to research or what to look at or how to even look it up. So I was looking up things such as depression. I was looking up
Mm,
things such as schizophrenia. I
mm-hmm.
was looking up mental illness. These are all the
Mm-hmm.
things I was looking up because I was like, I'm insane. I'm obviously insane.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing though that resonated with me was that, you know, I couldn't sleep, and so I'd go for these walks at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd be out in the middle of the night, and of course everything's quiet and still, and the voice would tell me like black cat, and in another like 2 minutes later I'd see a black cat running across the sidewalk, or I'd hear a blue truck or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, and I'd think, okay, this is just dumb, and then I'd walk a little further, and sure enough there'd be a blue truck sitting there. So I knew that something was talking to me that was making sense and wanted my attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to things kind of evolved from there. I started to realize that some of these voices felt good,
Mm.
while other ones felt manipulative or bad. And I they were trying to I noticed they were both trying to influence me. Like I had the devil and the angel on each shoulder,
Mm. Hmm.
and I was like, what do I do? Where do I go? And it was like in that moment that I realized, all right, you know what? I already said yes to this crazy shit. Like I've got to find a way to navigate this. Well, how am I going to know how to navigate this? Like I I want to make sure if I say yes or no to something, it's for my best good and the best
Mm-hmm.
interest of myself and whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I immediately was like, all right, I have to know myself. I have to know myself and know myself really well so I can make the best decisions, because there are some strong forces working with me right now, and that's freaking me out. And um so that's where I really kind of started to meditate,
Mm.
to try to just get calmer and find out uh what's happening
Mm-hmm.
inside. But
Mm-hmm.
um this really went on for about 6 months or so, and I got to the point where I was ready to either kill myself or check myself into an insane asylum, because I thought I'm crazy, and this
Right.
anything is going to be better than continuing this, because
Right.
I didn't know what to do or where to go, and I kept hearing the name of an intuitive in Minneapolis. Kept hearing her name over and over and over and over and over. And I'm like, all right, so what's with this woman? I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And so I give her a call and say, hey, um, I don't know why, but I'm supposed to have a session with you. She says, great, let's have a session. So I had a plan. I was like, all right, so based on whatever happens in this session with her, I'm either going to check myself into an insane asylum on the following Monday,
Wow.
or hopefully she tells me something that shifts what I think about all this.
Right.
So I went into that session with her and I just like laid it all out. Like I
Mm-hmm.
expected her to laugh me out of the room. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that she would tell me I was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all this stuff. So I was crying. I told her it and I was just
Mm.
crying. I was like, this is horrible and whatever. And she's just like, oh, you had a Kundalini awakening.
Mm-hmm.
You're totally normal. You're a light worker. And I'm like, what's a Kundalini? Like who works with
What kind of
working
pasta is
with
that?
working with light? Is that an electrician? Like I'm like, I had no idea what any of this stuff was.
Right.
Zero.
Kundalinguini.
Kundalini awakening. That was crazy.
Uh-huh.
It
So she
was
confirmed, gave you a context for what was happening.
well, the thing that she did, when she started throwing terms at me, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, all right, because if she had, I knew that if she had a term for what I
Mm-hmm.
had experienced, then
Mm-hmm.
somebody else had been through it also.
Right, right.
And that was the first moment in
Mm-hmm.
the whole time that I didn't feel alone.
Right.
That I felt alone. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I am a freak.
Mm.
Nobody has this. I thought there's no way.
Right.
And then the more and more I started to research everything, I started to realize, oh, okay. Um, like I started to read about shaman, about what they go through, and awakening processes, and
Mm-hmm.
all the things. And I was like, okay, all right,
Right. Yeah, right. This is not, this is a phenomenon that has been happening to people throughout history.
throughout history.
Yeah.
But I don't. It doesn't get talked about it in our society very much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely my, sort of the thing that I'm leaning towards how I sort of position the work that I do is like, and the people that I'd like to work with, I
Uh huh.
like to work with people that, um, and yeah, people who have kind of had some sort of an awakening and are having trouble sort of integrating the fallout
Well,
from that. Cause seems like there's always fallout.
oh, there's man, Fallout's huge. Well, let me ask you, Jay, because it's not like you get interested in this kind of thing just out of curiosity. Like I know that those 6 months forged my desire to work with people, because I was like, okay, if I'm going to go through this at this
Mm-hmm.
level and suffer this much, like I determined during that time, nobody should ever have to go through this the way
Right.
I did. Like
Right.
I made it my life's purpose during that
Right.
time to make sure that nobody would have to go through what I went through.
Uh-huh.
So what is it that got you interested in it? Like
Mm-hmm.
what you had to have something to
Right.
you know
Right.
tilt you in this direction. What what's
Well,
your story?
yeah, interesting. Like I was think thinking, well, I mean, that the answer to that question like goes back. I think, I always had a sense growing up, I had this sort of strange sense that like the healing comes from within, that the body had the capacity to heal itself. And
Mm-hmm.
then I had an accident. I ended up being a chiropractor, going to a chiropractor. My dad took me to a chiropractor when I was a kid, and then I ended up going to chiropractic school, and I ended up, yeah, I guess there was just a number of awakenings. Uh, Ended up discovering this woman who did this network chiropractic thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that was sort of an awakening. I had an awakening there where after like about 15, I remember 15 sessions, I walked out of there one time and the all of a sudden the colors seemed brighter, and it felt like a 300-pound weight had been lifted off my shoulders, and I had this amazing sort of feeling in my
Mm-hmm.
body that was sort of prompting all of these things, thoughts like, hey, I got a great opportunity here, and I got a great girlfriend, and I got a great family, and some version of like all the possibilities that were available to me, when previous to that I was kind of going down kind of a dark path, I'd say.
Uh-huh.
Cynical and dark, and so like there's an awakening. And then also, then down the road, like I ended up in, and that was in Minnesota as well. Then down the road, I ended up in practicing chiropractor here in Colorado, and kind of similar to your story there in a certain way. Like I had been doing a lot of yoga at this place over here, and there was this yoga teacher that I really liked, and I just kind of noticed from time to time on her card it said she also did shamanic journeys
Oh,
and
okay.
soul retrieval, and I had been, I grew up in a conservative Christian household,
Mm-hmm.
and had been, constantly sort of battling with internally with myself over that, over, here I am doing this sort of network thing, which is like really, voodoo on some level,
Mm.
which, and I just always had this feeling, from my upbringing, like this concern, like, you want to, the path to righteousness is narrow, very narrow, and very few people go down it. Most people end up go missing it, going to hell, basically. So I was kind of like always worried, like,
Yeah.
if I make the wrong move, did I make the wrong move? And this network chiropractic thing was always there's a internal battle going on inside of me all the time about whether or not this was Satan's work, whether or
Oh
not I was
gosh.
doing the devil's work. Uh,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
at some point, I don't know, I just got more and more sort of distance from that. And I saw on the back of her card this yoga teacher that she did shamanic journeys. And I was like, huh, shamanic. Suddenly that, like, kind of like you were saying, suddenly that word sort of caught my attention. And I was in a place where I was like, all right, I'm curious about that. I can let myself be curious about that. Because previously I think that word would just been equated with the devil, basically,
Sure.
with Satan. And so she came over to my house and sort of like set up she was going to do a series of 6 journeys for me. She was going to facilitate a series of 6 journeys, and she came over to my house, and she sort of like set up we set up a space, and she did rattling, and she like prayed to the God, to the east and the west and the north and the south and the sky and the earth, and trying to like setting up the channel. And I think it was the first or second journey that I did, like it was weird. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced. Like I she told me to just put myself in a natural space, imagine myself in a natural setting, and I imagined myself sort of like sitting on a grassy hillside. And then she said, most people, they're you're looking for your guide here, but most people, it takes them a while to sort of figure that out. But immediately, like, this bird came to me, and I was like, oh, all right. And in my imagination, sort of, and I could say, like, is this my imagination? Is it not my imagination? I don't know, whatever, I'll go with it. And this bird came to me, and I got like sucked into the bird's eye, and me and the bird went flying, and the bird landed on this like totem pole platform in this wooded area. And all of a sudden it was sort of like, boom, transported to this underground cave.
Wow.
And and then there was this light at the end of the cave. And still I'm like, oh, this is very, very interesting. Like I don't know if this is my imagination or what this is, but I'll go with it. And there was a light at the
Sure.
end of the cave,
Huh?
and these sort of figures started coming out of the light, and I was like, there's these figures. I'm telling her, like, there's these figures coming out of the light, and she's like, well, you know, talk to them or whatever. And I was trying to sort of talk to them, and I could feel, sort of energetically speaking, like some sort of channel was trying to get set up. And I told her that it's like, I'm trying to, like, there's this channel trying to set up. And she's like, well, ask them about it. And I asked them, I kind of in my head or whatever, asked them about it. And it was like this team of like when you see on movies, like there's like a FBI or CIA doing some operation, and there's like an operation team, somewhere in a van, or they're somewhere in a control center or something.
Sure. Uh-huh.
It was like
Yeah.
that. It was like the control center all of a sudden was like, hold on. We're trying, well, we got it. You just relax. We're setting up the feed. And then all of a sudden this sort of like feed like appeared it was like video and video, like if you
Okay.
have a video and video situation on your screen, all of a sudden this sort of like feed, I could feel this opening happening in my, in my awareness in the upper right hand corner. And then these guys that had coming out of the light, they started talking to me, and I could see who they were, and I could feel this sort of like immense love.
Whoa.
And that's sort of what, I couldn't deny that. It's sort of like, that's what made me feel like this was real. This is a world that I sort of like hooked up with, and these guys are real, and they're yeah. So, and I could go into sort of detail about what they said and who they were, but that sort of whole experience just really like, like, whoa, that rocked my world and sort of like opened me up to a whole other world, just to think that, wow, that stuff that's real. Like
Wow.
these guys are out there and they're keeping an eye on me and wishing the best for me, and I could feel the love. So that was kind of like one, sort of experience, but there's kind of one that really sticks out in my head, which was I was reading Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth.
Yeah, I remember that.
I have it
But
here.
that was his second one.
Yeah,
I think it's
you're right.
new consciousness now is new. Yep.
The Power of Now is
Power of Now. That's
his
right. That's
first
right.
one, but A New Earth, and in here, is really speaking to me because he talks a lot about Jesus, and he sort of positions things in that way. Like, what were the real sort of teachings of Jesus? Sort of, this is what Jesus kind of really meant.
Uh-huh.
And he was just talking in there a lot about sort of your ego and how we sort of see, we tend to identify with our ego, and we sort of like see ourselves through that lens, and how we project it onto the world. And I don't know, he was talking about that stuff. And then suddenly, as I was reading this book, I suddenly sort of like started to see something. I had this vision of sorts, and I saw like this room, and I suddenly kind of like this strip kind of came into view. And suddenly like the strip started to peel apart. Like I was getting this kind of like I think I was getting peeled apart from my ego. There was some space that
Isn't
was
that
happening,
comfortable?
this strip, and it started to sort of like separate.
Mm-hmm.
And then after it separated, like I was more aware actually of the space, like that this whole, I was like, that was interesting. Like, what is that? And then I was really drawn to the space that this whole thing was happening in. And I kept paying attention to the space and this room. It was like pitch black. It started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I started sort of like asking myself, it was sort of prompting me. I was like, wait a minute, after having sort of separated from my ego somehow, I started feeling like, well, wait a minute, who am I? Like, I don't feel the same as, like, who am I? Am I this? Like, am I that? You sort of like thinking about where this fit in, and I couldn't really place it. But I noticed that every time I said sort of like, I am this, I am that, none of the stuff really felt true, but the part that did feel true was the I am part. And
Oh, wow.
every time I just started saying, well, I am, and every time I said I am, it was like a vibration was sent out into this room, and the room got bigger and bigger. And every time I said I am, it was like a drum beat that sort of like vibrated with this whole massive space
Wow.
until it was like an infinite space. And it was nothing. It was like pitch black, and it was nothing. uh, all about nothing. It was like, I'm all there is and I'm nothing. It was just like so much nothingness. And I kind of thought to myself, like, wow, I thought you're supposed to be like one with everything, but this is nothing. This is all about nothing. And I'm all there is, and I'm nothing. And then I started feeling like, wow, like I don't know what about it made me think like this is what it must feel like to be God. And when I would like say these things, like if it was true, it would sort of like vibrate in this space. And I was like, this must be what it must be like to be God. And then I was like, I am God. And it was like, wow, that was just like true. Like I am God. I'm all there is, and I'm nothing, and I'm all there is. And that felt totally true in that moment. And then, but the second that I said that, like for instance, that's the that's the thing that got Jesus crucified. Speaking of crucifixion,
Sure,
they
sure,
asked
sure.
him, they said, like, hey, you've been the Jews, the Judean priests or whatever, I think, that said like, hey, you've been going around saying you're God, like, is that true? And Jesus said, I am, you know, and that's basically, I think, what got him crucified.
That's right.
But I think I know what he meant. He said, I am. He was like,
I
in
am.
in his I amness, in this I amness that I had experienced. But I knew that, doing that's blasphemy. And so all of my previous like
Oh,
conditioning,
sure. Yeah.
it sort of like pushed everything out, and all there was this nothing. But then all of a sudden, my conditioning sort of like started flooding back in the form of thought, kind of, and like, whoa, what did you just say? That's blasphemy. And and I saw the whole, the devil and Satan. And I mean, I saw it as that all started like flooding back into my awareness. And however, I sort of, even though I was sort of taking it on again, I saw it from the perspective of this nothingness, of this I amness, and sort of like digested it and processed it through that lens. And so I kind of saw like, oh, this is my ego. This is, it's something that was sort of, it's information that was a story that was designed to sort of keep me in this place, to keep me separate from God, to keep me separate from my own divinity,
Yeah.
to keep me
Yeah.
separate from this experience that I
Yep.
am God.
Yeah.
So I saw it through that lens. And then after that, and this whole thing, like, this lasted maybe, I may have happened in the course of like 5 seconds. I'm not really sure. Like, I'm
Sure.
telling you this whole story, but it kind of like happened in the course
Mm-hmm.
of like a short amount of time.
Yep.
And I was like, sort of, I'm kind of like reading the book, and it's like, that happened, blah, blah, blah. Like, what was that? You know? and and then, like life was kind of like normal again. But then, the sort of struggle that I had with religion and with, who God is and what it means to be God, and how you're supposed to be in a right relationship with God, and what that means, and who Jesus was, and like all of that's kind of that previous conditioning kind of just started to just like crumble, over
Yeah.
the course of time. And the sort of struggle about this thing that I do, this network thing that I do, and how that might be, I might be going down the path to hell.
Yep.
All
My
of that
burn
started,
press.
to sort of crumble. And I got to the place where I was like, you know what? Like, I've been asking, my prayer has always been, I just want to do the thing that I've been put here to do and accomplish that. And who am I to sort of like fight? And I keep getting led down this path, and this is what lights me up on some level. So like, God, if, hey, you know what, if my parents and all of that and all that fundamentalist Christian stuff, if that's correct, I take full responsibility. If I get to the pearly gates and you're like, well, Jay, you effed up, you know, you went
These gates are
down,
turning hot.
the wrong path, you effed up, they were right, I'll take full responsibility. But, I feel like I realize, God has just been speaking to me through what lights me up, and this sort of, the gravity that me being pulled towards this world of healing. And so yeah, so I was able at some point after that to sort of embrace this on a whole other level, and just
So did you?
trust that what's coming down the pipe
Oh yeah.
is not, you know I don't have to try so hard to sort of figure out what is the devil and what is God. But on
Yeah.
some level, it's all God. And yeah,
That's the thing with
so
these things. You can't deny the truth of what you feel when you're in the middle of these things, and you come back and you go, "Dang,
right.
man!" Like it just takes all your
Mm,
paradigms that you thought
mm-hmm.
and believed and trusted in,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns everything upside down,
Sure. Yeah, you
everything
might
inside
you
out.
might say that, like I might tell this story to someone in my family or whatever, and they'd be like, "Well, how can you trust that?" But it's just like
Yeah, you're
you
it's
just
like
know.
your body doesn't your body can't deny it.
Right. Right.
Body just can't deny it. You just know.
Right.
It's such a profound thing that you just, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's such a gift, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So then did you have, like, what was it like after that? Did you have a period of time then where you were like, a couple
Oh.
months or a week or an hour or 10 minutes where you were like, boy, this is just, my head is messed up. I'm not quite sure
Mm-hmm.
what to think of life or what I'm doing.
Right.
Like, what came out of that?
Yeah, like fortunately, I mean, you tell your story and it's like, oh, that sounds really, really friggin' hard. And it's true. Like I run into a lot of people who you have this sort of expand, like a teacher of mine, Shinzen Young, says that the unit of creation is a simultaneous expansion and contraction. And so there's a way in which we're always sort of navigating expansion and contraction. And often, people have these like awakenings. They go into this expansive place or whatever, um, and then there's kind of like a crash. Like then they have to like go into the contraction, and they have to like take a
Yeah.
closer look at all of the parts of themselves that aren't in alignment with the expansive place, and who you really are, your soul or whatever. And then that's like often like really, really hard.
Oh my God.
And it
Yeah,
sounds like
that's the
you
hard
had
part.
that
It's
experience.
terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, but I can't say. I mean, there have been some, and I've had other sort of awakening experiences. I was at these meditation. I started meditating
Uh-huh.
at some point and had these sort of experiences of. I think some people like Buddhists might call that experience that I just explained like the no self. It's like you totally disidentify from all of the conditioned identity that you think you are, and you
Yeah.
experience what you really are, which is on some level, God is in you, God is in everything. You experience the part of you that is God. um and what was I going to say? Where was I going?
Are you talking about the
uh,
no self and the
The no,
integration in the end,
oh,
right?
and then I had some experiences at these meditation retreats, and there were some sort of dark nights of the soul. On some way, I think I was living one long dark night of the soul often. Like I was often like cynical and dark and pushing against myself and talking myself, getting in my own way a lot. And there were points where some stretches of time where I experienced that very intensely, like the stuff like you're kind of talking about with maybe in a different, we talked about like how you felt as a kid and maybe depression and stuff like that you experienced as a kid, and the
Oh
depression that
yeah.
you experienced after this awakening, like really felt that the conflict like super intense. And those, if there are stories and there are dark voices that you're believing and talking to yourself, like those dark voices get louder, and feel it in your body, and you're just like really in the dark night of the soul. And I certainly had some experiences like that later on, but somehow after this story that I just told you, wasn't really, it was like really slow. Things just kind of like started to kind of crumble, and it wasn't a lot of drama around letting them crumble.
Oh, that's great.
And that happened over sort of like a period of time, period of
Sure.
years.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So,
Wow, good for you.
mm-hmm.
Good
Thanks
for
for
you.
listening. And thanks for
Yeah.
sharing your story. I mean, have you had any other sort of experiences like that, or
Hmm.
and also like how did you end up like I don't know if you really talked about how you ended up like coming out of that, you know?
Well, that was a gradual process. Incidentally, I uh, that gal that did the reading for me, she did the reading for me, and I was like, I'm a mess. I need another session. I don't know. I mean, well, she and I ended up dating for 2 years, and she happened to be
Oh.
an author. She had been an author of
I know
20.
who that is. I know who it is now, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wasn't making that connection.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she had written like 20 something books on chakra healing
Uh-huh.
and intuition
I
and all
have one.
kinds. Yeah, Jay actually had one. And she just pulled it out, and I was like, "Wow, you got one of her
That's my
books?
ex.
It's my ex." He's like, "What?" I was like, "I'm all yeah." Um, but and so it was cool because I traveled the country with her and like went to her workshops, and
Mm.
she taught me how to
Wow.
use my intuition. She taught me
Right.
how to do a lot of the stuff
Mm-hmm.
that I don't per se use the techniques she taught me then, but
Mm-hmm.
but at that time it gave me a frame of reference. It gave me something that I could work with.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what I had laying in me is like raw potential, I suppose. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, that it took. I mean, it was honestly it took probably about a year and a half or 2 years before I was really kind of felt like I was functioning somewhat normal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, No, it was probably longer than that because our relationship was great for a little while, and then it was really hard for a long while. And um, then I had to, and then I was dealing with, kind of the downfall or the fallout from that
Mm-hmm.
relationship for a while. And so it
Mm-hmm.
was, that moment really marked the beginning of about really 4 really hard years that
Mm-hmm.
followed. And then, um, and then it was interesting. I had another really intense one. I had a bunch of them, but they're the really kind of the next really big one that I can recall was when I was living in Santa Fe, and I
Mm-hmm.
was watching a movie one night, and out of the blue I just had this massive download of just boom. It just was it said they told me I was going to die. It
Mm.
said you're going to die, and it was like you have six. It literally said to me,
You
you
always
have 6 weeks to get your things in
you
order.
always got these voices that are like telling you things.
Oh, and they don't mess around either. It's like they tell me the craziest stuff, and then I'm just left to kind of deal with it. And so I wrote letters to my family, wrote letters to my friends. I had a will made up. I had an executor to the will figured out. I had everything
Wow.
notarized and all set. And I was like, hey,
Wow.
if anything happens to me, go find the
Right.
key here. You'll find the letters there. Everything's addressed. Everything's stamped.
Wow.
Just toss them in the mail. Blah, 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 blah. Here's who gets this. Here's who gets. Like, I had everything figured out. I went through that
Mm-hmm.
whole horrendous, awful process of thinking and like literally believing I was going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through a month of that, and it was terrible, 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 awful. And I woke up one day, and had been processing this for a while, just terrible. And I woke up one day, and I was just really agity or just irritable, really,
Mm-hmm.
really, really just in just a snarky, snotty
Mm-hmm.
mood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, and I'm mad. I'm just mad. And I'm living by myself, so I can kind of say and make as much noise as I want, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, I'm talking to my guides and angels, and I'm just cussing them up. I'm like, you jerks, I'm
Yeah.
just like,
Right.
you know, I'm mad about dying. I'm mad about this. I'm like, I've got business to do here, and I'm just irritated. And finally, it struck me. I'm like, you know what? I'm creating my reality here.
Mm.
Like, I've got free will. I'm like, F you.
Mm-hmm.
F you, and you're telling me I'm gonna like
Mm.
no, I've
Mm-hmm.
got free will. I'm choosing to stay. Like, forget your plan, forget your prophecy. I'm like, I'm staying.
Right.
I'm like, no, 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 no. And I had a little shaman bag. I went out into the woods. I went up into the mountains in Santa Fe. I set up a sacred circle. I called in the spirits. I did a whole ceremony where it was a celebrating a new life ceremony where I
Mm-hmm.
told them, I'm like, I'm staying. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not playing this game with you. Like, if I'm supposed to go through some sort of change, if I'm supposed to be a different person in this world, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have to make that change in this body with me being here.
Hmm.
I'm not going. You
Hmm.
can't kill me.
Hmm.
And they said, all right, have it your way. And they told me that the next 6 years of my life would be almost impossibly hard. And they were. they were. They were. I think it was like a week or two after I had that ceremony. I couldn't sleep one night, and I went for a walk downtown Santa Fe, or actually through the art district. That's where I was living. And I was out for a walk in the middle of the night, and I was hit with another download. It just said, "You're done here. You're done with Santa Fe." And so I immediately asked, I go, "Well, where do I go?" And of course, they didn't tell me anything. I'm like, "Oh, great. I got to figure this out too." you know, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
you know, and so incidentally, I ended up moving
Not a lot of
to,
help.
oh, yeah, they like, great, Um, so I ended up, I think it was a month later, that's when I moved to Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just 4 years that was just, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. Incidentally, that 6 year mark ended, um, it ended like in the last year.
Hmm.
I'm like, just coming out of that
Oh,
now.
they told you there was going to be like 6 years of.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. They
Okay.
straight up
Okay.
said, okay, you're gonna have 6 years
Mm-hmm.
that are gonna be just almost unbearable to you.
Right.
And I said, fine, whatever.
You mean
You know, yeah,
you could have died, or you, in order either die or like, if you, since you chose to stay here, it was like, all right, you're gonna have to go through some hard stuff then.
yeah. That's what it
Huh.
boiled down to. In other words, you can stay, but we're gonna totally
Work, yeah.
strip you of your identity. We're gonna change
Mm-hmm.
who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna do all these different things. And they even showed me, because I asked him, I said, well, okay, if I pass on, where am I gonna go? I was going to be my brother's youngest kid, is who I was going to be.
Hmm.
And he's got, at the time, he had one he had one son, and he's got three kids now, and I was going to be
Mm-hmm.
his youngest boy.
Wow.
yeah.
So you're like going to come back pretty much immediately.
Yeah, I wasn't going to be gone for very long. I was going to be who my nephew is right now.
Well, I guess you got to do it anyway, right?
Right. But I was like, what, man? I don't want to start over. Like, come
Right.
on. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, is
Yeah.
that really been, yeah, come on. I can live through this.
Right.
So now I'm on the other side of that, and I'm different for sure. I am not who I was back
You're
then
not a
at
pipe
all.
fitter.
I'm not a pot fitter. I'm not living in a Buddha Zen center anymore.
Right.
like these things are done. Uh,
Uh-huh.
you know,
What do you think is the difference between, I mean, these are all sort of like awakening experiences, there's all sorts of different versions of awakening. It seems like it's
yeah.
Kundalini awakening, this,
Oh,
that. I mean, my experience was like, I had this experience of
yeah.
nothingness, and I feel like I sort of passed that along to my clients and the work that I do. And here your experience was like totally different, and it had, a lot about these beings of some sort, giving you information, and now you channel. And so like, and I guess I'm aware of that sort of thing too. I wonder like how, I don't know, I wonder what's the difference between
Well,
those awakenings. Or
here's the thing. Just the people I've had a number of people come out to, and I brought this up a few times with people, and they'll start sharing their stories, and because I've also had awakenings just through using medicine, like plant medicine,
Mm,
or
mm-hmm,
like doing um, DMT
mm-hmm,
and psilocybin and stuff like
mm-hmm.
that, or ayahuasca.
Right.
Like had different awakenings from that as well. And the one thing that I've noticed that's congruent with all of them is that you have these awakening experiences, and they essentially give you a roadmap of what's coming, or
Mm-hmm,
what where you're going to go. But then it's
mm-hmm,
like after you come out of the experience, it's like now the work begins.
mm-hmm,
Like you can go and do these medicine journeys, but and people go, wow, I got to such a high place and blah blah blah.
mm-hmm.
Great, now it's time to integrate it. You just got your roadmap, now it's time to
Right.
start your car and drive down the road.
Right.
Yeah, and your road just got narrower, because now the road got narrower and your car got wider. So
Right.
good luck.
Right. Your vehicle got
Yeah. And
bigger.
I've had people talk about like alien experiences where they'll
Uh-huh.
find themselves on a UFO. Or one, actually I had one person that told me, she said she was asleep one night and she woke up and she could see three little alien heads over her, and it's like she woke up and she was laying on like a gurney in like
Mm-hmm.
a spaceship,
Right.
and
Like an abduction experience, sort
yeah,
of.
like an abduction experience, and they were like communicating amongst each other, and then all of a sudden at once they all just looked down at her, and they kind of
Mm-hmm.
like had this moment of like almost panic, where they were like, oh shit, she could see us, so she's
Mm.
lucid,
Right. Right.
and all of a sudden her eyes like refocused and she was in her bedroom again.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, what do you, so like there's a commonality, which is like there's some, I don't know, you changed in such a way that your path maybe changes from where you were, the direction that it was going. But
Yeah.
like, why do you, I don't know, have any thoughts about like why there's like some, why one person's journey is like, involves channeling and working with your spirit guides and plant medicine or aliens, or my things kind of got a little bit more of like, I don't know, Buddhist flavor to it, maybe
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist monk flavor. Like, what is it? You think it's like your soul journey, or what? I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what I'm
Well,
trying to
I
say exactly.
maybe this would be a good time to channel.
I mean, yeah, sure, absolutely. But like my, right, they might have something to say about this. But my, I don't know. I'm probably not gonna be channeling. I'm
Well,
probably
that
I'm
you
probably
know,
not gonna. I mean, my wife does some shamanic work and she talks to spirit guides, and I could. I don't know. I don't feel drawn to go down that path. So yeah. So.
here's I think, and this is just my personal, just what I've gleaned from my own, what I've been told from channelings, and just from my experience and what I've seen other people go through, and hearing their journeys and stories, is I really, and this is just my belief, is I believe that um, we all have agreements we make before we even, as we enter Earth, that we
Mm-hmm,
essentially, and then this is how I used to see past lives for people, is I would see their soul come to Earth,
mm-hmm,
go around the Earth a few times, kind of size up,
mm,
what is Earth, what's it going to
mm-hmm,
do, how do I, as this whatever person's soul,
uh-huh,
um, how do I want to integrate with Earth? What do I
mm-hmm,
want to learn and share and learn and share and learn and teach and
mm-hmm,
whatever? Like, what's my path here?
mm-hmm,
And some, and it's like you just they lay out a path. And
right,
for 8 lifetimes, I'm going to be learning this, and for another number of lifetimes, I'm going to learn that. And
mm-hmm,
they go through these journeys and these cycles to get. And there's a lot of them that, what I've noticed, there's a lot of them that are culminating right now,
mm,
that a lot of their lifetimes led up to something they're doing at this time, like
Mm-hmm.
literally at this moment.
Right.
And like we're at this culminating point in time right now, and a culminating point in our consciousness. And um we just have different agreements. It's
Yeah.
like Jesus didn't come in and just, I will go, I think I'm gonna save the planet.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, I think I'm gonna be the Lord of Love, or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that was for him. uh it's like there's something that was decided before he came in, that, hey, you know what, buddy, there, buddy, we're gonna give you the nod when you're in there, and you know you're gonna
Right.
wake some people up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that
Hmm.
there's a level of, I believe there's a level of destiny to all of it. But I also believe, just through what I've experienced, that there's also choice and honoring, and a level of graciousness to it too, where it's like, okay, you're in there, you're in there, you've got that, you're walking around in that meat popsicle of yours that you call a body. And if you get to a certain point and you don't want to do this, you do have a choice to say no. And I really see that whole death thing as the option. It's like, well, here you go, kid. Like, you got the option. You can step
Mm.
out, or you can stay in the game, and we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna throw you in the middle of the rodeo ring, and good luck. you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think there's some things around that. But with the channeling, it was like I had met a woman in Encinitas that we connected, and it just kind of opened up, really kind of out of the
Mm-hmm.
blue. As soon as we met, like, she started channeling, I started channeling, just opened. And then
It's
I
always
did
women for
bufo.
you too.
What's that?
It's always women for you too.
There's always a female component there does often seem to be a woman that enters the picture, that like opens my gifts, or
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
something. There's definitely been that component.
Mm-hmm.
But the channeling was like, I did some 5-MeO and bufo one night,
Mm-hmm.
and left my body with that medicine. And when I came back, uh, like for 2 weeks, it would just kept ringing in my head. You will channel. You must channel. And it was like my whole body would
Mm-hmm.
reverberate with that voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, you think I should channel? Is
Mm-hmm.
that what you like? It was just like, I mean, it was maddening. But so I'm like, well, okay, I guess I'll keep practicing the channeling. And so that's what I've been doing. So
Yeah, it seems like our journeys or whatever are laid out for us somehow, for some
yeah, it's my
by something.
hypothesis. Yeah.
There's some flavor to it or some characteristics of it that are just sort of like laid out.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
should we
Very
channel?
interesting. Yeah. I was speaking thereof. Um, yeah. Let's see what we got here.
You need to take a break or anything, bathroom break or before
Uh,
you go, or
yeah. We go.
is the mechanism clear?
Mechanism is clear. Well, cool. Well, um, I'll tune in and see what they got today.
All right, let's see what we come up with.
Thank you. Thank you for setting this up. Thank you for the opportunity to connect with you all in this way. Thank you for the opportunity to speak through this vessel. Thank you for coming here with your collective questions and your interests in your own consciousness, which is essentially what you are all doing here, is you are all interested in consciousness, because it is consciousness that which is changing not only yourselves, but is changing the planet in which you live on. And the fact that you are asking such questions indicates that you are living in the present and that you are aware of a change that is happening. Otherwise, you would not have such questions. We want to speak today about the way this is happening. We want to illuminate a lot about what you talked about today in your conversation. We are the overseers. We have been speaking through this one for some time now, and we are the ones who speak today. We know that you like to know the answers to these things, and so we have figured out to answer them, to eliminate that question in the minds who wonder. Because a mind that wonders is a mind that wanders. The more present you can be to these transmissions, the more you will get out of them. So bringing your awareness to yourself and listening to these words will help. We want to expound on the topic of awakening. We want to speak of awakening. We want to talk a bit about more of the awakening and fill in some blanks that are existing in some of those who are listening. Awakenings are happening in virtually every person on your planet. Even the dark ones are awakening. However, it all gets displayed in different ways. The dark ones, or the ones who are in service to self, as they awaken, their darkness comes forward. The light and awakening essentially highlights and exacerbates everything that is inside, and it puts it on the forefront. If you are a nice person and you go through awakening, eventually you become more of a nice person. If you are a person who is not nice, if you are someone who is dark, when you awaken, you express more of your darkness. Understand that those that you see in your world expressing their darkness are serving a role no less or no less, only different from the role that you are playing. Because those without the darkness could not allow those who have the light to shine their light. Those who are dark will be disappearing more and more, and there will be fewer and fewer of them. We've mentioned this before, but what we want to expound on this time is that those who did their dark deeds were the ones who allowed the earth to go into a deeper place of experience for those of you who are on a path of light to have more varied experiences upon this planet, and that is the service that the Dark Ones provided for you. How else could you be a being of light, be a being of love, be a being of oneness, and yet experience degrees of hatred, anger, and separation? The only way to do it is to be in the presence of the Dark Ones, and that has been their service to you. In the end, things always go back to the light, no matter how dark they may seem. And that really is, when you are one of the light, what happens is you go through your awakening, and you awaken not just to your light, but you awaken to the darkness that you have within that is intermeshed with your light. You awaken to all of you. And when you awaken to all of you, you must discern that which you are and that which you are not. That can throw your life into a great degree of chaos. It always leads to introspection. It always leads to deeper questioning. And it indeed can be disturbing for those who are in love with their life. So we want to expound a bit about this process and what it might look like for some of you, because it looks different to each and every one of you. Awakenings come in all forms. Some have awakenings. In fact, it will be most on this planet who have this first type of awakening. And this is the gradual sort of awakening, where you make different choices, where you start having different thoughts, you begin having uncomfortable emotions, and you simply move through life and you begin to realize that you have these subtle differences, and your dreams will end up helping to guide your waking life. Some of you are conscious of how these dreams are and how they interact with you, and some of you are not. Regardless, the dreams are always an activating point for these changes. Your emotions, your thoughts, and your unexpected reactions are where you gain an understanding that you are indeed a different person. And this happens in gradual increments over a period of time. The majority of you experience it that way. There are those of you who experience it in more of an accelerated pattern. There are more of you who have a desire to move forward and desire to move through a little faster. You are the ones who begin by taking up a practice of sorts. You begin to meditate. You begin to essentially do something to help you get to know you. You are the ones who may have a breakdown in a relationship. You may have a breakdown to break through. Something catalyzes itself in your life, causing a major disturbance at which you begin to make different decisions about what you want to experience in your life. Granted, this happens to every human being. However, the second population has a different quality to it, in that you are not comfortable going back to the same life you had before, and you consciously make a decision for something different. This group accelerates and moves through their awakening faster than the first group. Along with meditation, there are many other practices that these people do, whether it be somatic healing, whether it be NLP, whether it be anything you can imagine that is of a self-healing nature or a program in which a person endeavors into for a degree of self-understanding. Then there is another group. This group will have all of the experiences of the first two groups, but then they will also add another component of medicine and or have mystical experiences that are thrust upon them. This group grows the fastest of all of them. This group has awakenings that are spontaneous, that are not planned on, things that happen out of the blue to them that are unexplainable and take paradigms and shatter them quickly. These awakenings are abrupt. These awakenings are oftentimes disturbing. These awakenings oftentimes take time to integrate. The components we would like to assign to these different groups are ages of the soul as well. You see, there is a progression that happens. The younger souls that are here, those souls that have not been through such a transition on a planet before, even though they may have come from an enlightened place, but not experienced an awakening on Earth, oftentimes will choose one of the first two. Sometimes they will choose the third. Most of the time, it is the first two. Your older souls will always choose, at a minimum, the second path. The oldest of your old souls will pick the latter of the three. The oldest of the old souls, those that have been here since the creation of the planet itself, will almost always choose the third path. Then there is a fourth path. The fourth path is always the most arduous. The fourth path is one that very, very, very few choose. This is the path of your enlightened master who comes to fully awaken and bring humanity in through the dawn of its new age at whatever era it happens to be moving through. These are your enlightened masters who perform miracles and who lead many into their own awakenings. These masters go through trials like no other. They experience the depth of their being. They experience the depth of their ego, and they are challenged to the nth degree with every fiber of their being until they are stretched beyond what you would call feasible or even reasonable, to a point where nothing is left but the very grace of God itself. These are the ones who are the bravest of the brave, the oldest of the old, and they tend to have been here and many other places at the creation of those places they have been. They have been the ones who oversee, they have been the ones who've been there from the beginning of time and out of time. They simply are. This is a brief categorization of what you see in terms of awakening on your planet. These are the general groups as they are. We must say that when you go through times like these, every soul on the planet experiences some variation of what we speak of. Even those who are the most turned off, the most remote within themselves, experience something. All of them do. Everyone on your planet right now is experiencing something that's different. You've chosen to go through a planetary awakening and a planetary ascension. No one gets to look away from what is happening right now. In a certain sense, everyone on your planet is experiencing one and a bit of number two with the things that are going on. Do you have any questions about what we've spoken of or anything else?
Thanks for that brilliant breakdown there. Um, yeah, just kind of you were saying, I mean, it's a theme that comes up a lot, that this sort of contrast, the dark is necessary on some level. You can't know the light without the dark. And so it's helpful to have the dark. I'm just curious, is that like an earth thing, or is that a thing in our universe, or not present on other planets, or not present in other dimensions or universes?
This is how you experience it this time around on Earth. Every planet has its own way of experiencing itself. Every planet has its own way of waking up from itself. You are experiencing Earth's way of doing it right now. There are other planets that have more than two sexes. There are planets that have more than two lobes in their brains. There are places that have awakened from such a variety of ways of being that you could not possibly comprehend with your minds what it is we're talking about. There are some planets where a few beings have the internet within them, or have the oneness and the oneness knowing, while others have none. And it is just a few that carry the information for the all. There are some where the all carry it for a few. You have a planet where it is somewhat like that, but it's more balanced throughout. There are certain basic themes that always must exist in order for this to happen, and that is a degree of difference. There's always a degree of difference that happens. That difference is sometimes more polarizing, sometimes it is less polarizing, but it is always difference. And that difference can be in the form of frequency. where you have some that are experiencing green, some who are experiencing blue, some who are experiencing red, some who are experiencing orange. You have variations within the frequencies of the people, and that becomes your polarization. There are many levels and many layers to how this looks. Things that would boggle your mind. In fact, your mind is only set up and established to understand this particular way of awakening. If it were designed to experience another one, you could not be here. It would be impossible. The awakening pattern, therefore, on every single planet is a little bit different. The one on this planet, for example, is as you move out of duality, or the thises and the that's, you are moving into many this, that's, which ends up being a fractalized nature of consciousness. In other words, you have a universe inside of a universe inside of a universe inside of a universe. It is absolutely impossible to explain how this works on other levels in other places. Understand, though, the different levels and the different ways that this looks is infinite. You are experiencing simply one version of infinite ways to be separate from God. Would you like to ask another question?
Unfortunately, we've run out of time for many more questions, but if you have any closing words for the next 5 minutes, that would be great.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk about such things. Thank you for your curiosity. Thank you for your desire to learn, to know, and to grow. Without that desire, we could not exist and participate in this game with you. We are grateful and we are gracious for this experience because through you, we too learn and grow, and more we get to know. Nobody is doing this alone. Not us, not you, not the planet, not the sun, not the universe. We are all being guided by that which uniforms and conforms everything eventually. Thank you.
Thank you. Deep bow to you.
Cool.
Morning, sunshine.
Morning, sunshine. Well, hello, moonbeam.
That was pretty, I don't know, structured and felt organized and useful.
Was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I made notes on it. I got some good notes here, so you'll see it at some
cool.
point. But yeah,
Cool.
the different types of awakening. There's 4 different types, and the age of the soul kind of plays into which type of awakening they are in, and that question about, yeah, it sounds like this is just the way that we are sort of experiencing it. It's kind of an earth thing. Different planets are different. So,
Yeah. That's a trip, huh?
yeah, that useful information, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. Interesting to say the least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well,
Excellent.
That was another episode of New Consciousness Now.
Yep.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Great
Thank
to
you
have
for
you.
being here. Yeah.
Yeah, lots
Thanks
of
for
fun.
listening.
You bet. We'll see you next time.
Yep. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye-bye.